Welcome back to the Pillars of Progress podcast. I'm Travis Justice. Today's episode is a special one. And yes, we kick things off with a little hair envy. You'll understand why in a second. Now, I'm joined by someone who has spent decades shaping the way we think about technology, culture, and innovation. Former Google Chief Education Evangelist, global consultant, and all-around deep thinker, Jaime Casap. Jaime joined us here at MCL to talk about building a culture of innovation. And we dove into everything from the meaning of culture to the discipline behind true innovation and why failure really isn't failure, it's iteration. He even shares why he still hasn't cut his hair since COVID and why I unfortunately don't have that option. We talk leadership, we talk hiring, adaptability, and the future of AI. And yes, how Google changed him and how he hopes to change the world next. It's thoughtful, it's funny, and it's one of those conversations that just sticks with you. Let's jump right in. Jaime, I'm going to be honest with you. I have hair envy. I don't start many of these podcasts with hair envy, but I have hair envy.
Well, I like that you committed, you went all in on it. Yes, I actually, this is not a true story, but I have this bit about a story that I made up in my head about how I went out on a blind date and some woman walks in and looks at me and goes, I'm not dating anyone with better hair than me, and then walks out. Because and the joke comes from my friends who are like, I don't like that you have better hair than me or longer hair than me, because I officially have the longest hair in my family. So yes, I think it's reverse psychology. I lived in Phoenix for 30 years, and I always said, I want to go bald. I want to go bald because it's too hot. And I think it's just reverse psychology. It worked.
That might be what you say. I went all in. I didn't have a choice, really. It's not that I chose to be bald. It's just God let me go bald.
But you didn't go to I'm going to pretend like I have hair thing.
Well, back on my TV days, I wore a wig for about 10 years.
Got it.
That's way TMI for this podcast. But when I was on television, I wore a wig for a long time.
Did you know that? No.
Yeah, so a lot of people don't know that, but that means it was a good wig. If people did not know I wore a wig, but this is kind of weird because you just spoke to our group about culture and building a culture of innovation. Is long hair as appearance part of culture?
It could be. Here's the honest truth. COVID happened. I didn't go get a haircut. And 5 years later, I'm saving $20 from Fantastic Sam's, not having to get a haircut every month. So I use it on Starbucks instead. It's just literally, I've had long hair before, and COVID happened. I went a year without it, and I just went how long can I go without it? And now the people in my life would kill me if I cut it. I used to have short hair, but I like it. It's a pain in the butt.
I will say being bald is actually a lot more work than I thought, because I still have to shave it. You got to shave it all the time.
Think about you save on shampoo and conditioner. You don't have to worry about that.
That's a fair point.
Yeah.
So I'm a cynic by nature.
Yeah.
I'm on LinkedIn a lot and we talk about culture a lot. I'm a cynic when it comes to culture, because everybody's like, we got to work on culture, and I get it. And you asked a very important question today: is what is culture? And I should have spoke up, but I'm going to save it for the podcast. To me, culture is, do I like where I work?
Yeah.
To sum it up, you can break it down into different categories, but would you agree with that assessment? It's just, I like where I work.
Well, I think where I would turn that into, I fit in where I work, right?
That's fair.
Because I think part of it is, just because you like a culture doesn't necessarily mean I like a culture. Let's say you like the banking culture and you like the idea of what Wall Street is like, and wearing suits and wearing tailored suits, where I might not, where you have tradition and direction. I used to say this about Google all the time, for people who wanted to work there, take a hard look, because it's not for everyone. So culture has to be a fit. It has to be something that you fit into versus you like. Because sometimes, even if we fit into the culture, we might not like the work we're doing. So there's a difference between the work you do and the place you fit. But I think we kind of got to the place in the session today where culture is really something that guides an organization. Every company, every organization, I've been fortunate to work with lots of different organizations. Everyone has a unique culture. And the more you are inside, it's like visiting countries. Every country that you visit is different. They have their own style in doing things. And I think one of the benefits for me of working with so many different organizations is that I get to go in and I can start seeing the patterns pretty quickly inside organizations.
I think it's safe to say that Google had a pretty big impact on your life. And you mentioned towards the end, it wasn't the impact that you wanted or things had changed. Was Google the biggest influence on your cultural life or not?
I think from an organizational perspective, I was very conscious of the fact that I was in a historic place, if that makes sense.
Yep.
Like, I used to yell at my teammates in Mountain View who worked in Mountain View who would not go to TGIF, because it was always broadcasted. You could watch it on TV or it was recorded. But if you took the walk or the drive, because Google expanded and got bigger, it was harder to get onto the main campus. But anytime I would visit Google and I was there on a Friday or a Thursday, when they moved TGIF to Thursday, I would go. I would block out my calendar to go because I knew that being in that room with Larry and Sergey and Eric Schmidt and Sundar and all the people who were working there, like, that was historic in the sense of, like, we're going to look back at this in 50 years or 100 years. And these are the people who have defined what the internet is like at the time. And so it was impactful in that way. But I would say that I felt at home when I was at Google, and if that makes sense. Like, I never fit in anywhere else culturally, and at Google I fit in. It fit my personality, it fit my style. I think someone mentioned introvertness in the room. I'm an introvert, but I have a severe ADHD that I did not discover until like 3 years ago, when I realized that my daughter had it, and I started looking at the symptoms and how do you define a kid with ADHD. And I started looking into it, and I'm like, oh, I have it, right? I have ADHD. And then I went in and did the assessments with a real doctor, and there's a couple different tests, but one of them is a scale that tells you if you have 6 of these 20 things, you have ADHD. I had 20 of the 20 things. Right?
Wow.
And the best part is that when I went to my friends and family, I'm like, hey, I have ADHD. Every response was like, duh, you didn't know that? Like, I had no idea. So Google fits someone like me because it has the discipline that I need to keep me on track. But it also had the freedom and space to let me be me and be accountable to the actions that I took. So that's why it fit like home.
You know, you grew to be Google's Chief Education Evangelist. That's a fancy title, but do you feel you changed the world? And I didn't mean that disrespectful when I said it's a fancy title. It's like... No, it's a great, I'll tell you, actually, the first thought that popped in my head, I'll share that, was... I think what I realized was that technology and education could be a big deal. I'm disappointed with how it's turned out, and that's why I'm back in and work on it, because I think what we did, I would say these in presentations and keynotes, is that same thing in business. If we take this new technology and put it on top of our current systems, all we're going to make is our old systems faster and more efficient. I said, what we have the opportunity to do is look at what learning needs to look like. We know what good learning looks like. We know what good businesses look like. We know what good learning should look like. What we need to do is say, how do we take the technology that's available to us to bring that learning to life? And that hasn't happened as much as I would like. That being said, my highlight at Google actually happened after I left Google, in an ironic way, which was the number of messages and text messages and messages on LinkedIn or on social media platforms from educators, whether they were school leaders or teachers, who are like, you saved us during COVID, because all of a sudden schools that weren't in school anymore, they had Google tools in their schools. They had Chromebooks. Kids hated me because, they didn't get to stay home and do nothing for 6 months or 9 months, however long it took, because now they could have, because of Google Classroom, because of the Google tools, because of the Chromebooks, because of the video conferencing tools, they could still have school remotely. And I think from changing the world perspective, I like to think that my team was able to at least keep kids engaged during that time when COVID was such a big deal across the world. So in that sense, I think I had an impact. Now, the other side of that is I want to make sure that when we use technology, that we're not being naive about it, that we're not just putting kids in front of screens. And so I'm still fighting that fight, that cultural fight, if you will. Your speech today was on building a culture of innovation. And again, my cynicism comes out because I live in this self-help world, right? And I hear the word innovation. I'm like, oh, it's just a buzzword. I know what you mean by it. But I think a lot of people think innovation is only tech. I don't believe, innovation is everywhere. I think. Do you agree with that?
I agree. And I also think that there's nothing new, right? So the iPhone is not new, right? Before the iPhone, we had the BlackBerry. Before the BlackBerry, we had the flip phone. Before the flip phone, we had the brick phone. Before the brick phone, we had so innovation to me is I guess I'm making up this word as we speak, so hopefully it gets coined. Progressive iteration, right? Innovation is progressive iteration, right? This idea that you take something and you make it better, or you make it more useful, and that you constantly keep doing it. And I think that's what it is. And so the difference to me between innovation and culture of innovation and anything else is that in an innovative culture, we don't pay attention to words like success and failure. Right? There's no such thing as success and failure. This is something I try to bring to schools, right? This idea that kids fail, we need to teach kids how to fail. No, we don't. We need to teach kids how to iterate, right? This idea that you get to X and it's not where you want to be, you don't fail. You just what did you learn? And then take the next step. So one of the things I didn't mention in the room today is this idea that we want experiments, not necessarily, we shouldn't fail. We shouldn't celebrate things that fail. We should celebrate learnings from those failures. And I think that's the difference. And so when I think about innovation, I think about progressive innovation, that things get better and things get more improved. And so nothing's new, it just gets better.
You brought up not having that failure. Don't tolerate incompetence, but tolerate failure.
Yeah.
Can you go into that a little bit more?
Yeah, so it's a basic concept, right? This idea, and you talked about innovation. I often laugh at when people talk about innovation in a different way, which is when most people think about innovation, they think about creative cultures where, everyone can do what they want, and you can wear your jeans and bring your dog to work and paint the wall red and have free food. And that's not an innovative culture. Actually, the best conversation I ever had on innovation and culture was with on a general at a base in Arizona, because he was set up for innovation. Why? Because they have discipline. So innovation to me equals discipline. So this idea of a willingness to experience failure, but not tolerate incompetence. So this idea that you can fail. You say you guys talk about anything. The Toronto Blue Jays failed, right?
Coming from a Yankees fan.
They failed, but it's not the failure you celebrate, it's the learning. What did they learn? Hopefully that their meeting isn't about failure and what went wrong. It's more than that it's about what they learn from that process and what can they get better at. And I think that's the difference between something that fails and something you learn from.
So you do a lot of consulting. When you go work with companies, they say, hey, we want to change our culture. Is your first question, do you really want to change your culture? Right. And are there messed up cultures, or did they just not hire for their culture?
Yeah, no, there's lots of toxic cultures out there, and lots of people have worked in those cultures, and you can see them. And some of them might be set up that way. And there's very transactional types of culture sometimes, right? And then there are cultures where they got toxic, but it's usually a top-down thing. It usually starts. So to me, if I'm going to work with an organization, I want to see the leadership team and how committed they are. Not how committed they are to innovation, how committed are they to discipline? And the great thing about the work I do is I do it in stages, and so you can see whether they're committed to something or not over time. Because again, this is not easy work. It's hard.
You brought something up, the 10 things we know to be true. And your first one was focus on the users. In our world, I'll say focus on our clients, right? Mm-hmm. But it really struck a chord with me because you worked at Google. I'm a Google evangelist when it comes to its I'm a Gmail lover. I'm a workspace guy. I have a Google phone.
Yeah.
It drives people here nuts because this is a Microsoft shop.
All right.
But it is that who does your product, who does your service affect is who you really have to put forward first.
Well, I would turn that around and say, so when I used to get so much from the Google marketing team because I would show up to do presentations. I would never use any of their marketing stuff. So you're marketing, like here's the templates, here's the slides. I'd use the slides you saw. I would build my own slide. I didn't even use a Google computer. I used my own MacBook, right?
You didn't use a Chromebook?
I would show up. I had a Pixel book. I still have my old Pixel book. I actually have in my studio at home the Chromebook team as a trophy, award, as a recognition, a celebration, gave me one of the first 3 original demo Chromebooks. So I have one of the 3 first Chromebooks ever built in my studio at home, right? So I have the Chromebook and I have my Pixel book and I have those things. But I would show up to conferences and do my keynotes on a PowerPoint deck using a MacBook, and it'd drive them insane. But here was the message the nonverbal message I was trying to get across, which was find the right tool for the right job, right? Not the tool that you want to use, right? And so what that meant was when I went to conferences back in 2011, if I was speaking at a conference with 5,000 people and they were using you will know this, they were using an AV staff. If I went back there and I said, here's my Google Slides on my Chromebook, like, what are you talking about, right? Like, where's your PowerPoint on a drive, right? Like, that's what they wanted. So I was finding that job. So I have a friend currently, I won't name where she works, but she's doing this group with entrepreneurs and she's only allowed to talk about their organization's tools. That's a failure, right? It's finding the right tool for the right job. So it's more about that kind of take on creating a culture of innovation is I told her, it's like, remember the old Miracle on 34th Street, the black and white one?
Yep.
Where Kris Kringle, the real Santa Claus, would send one of their customers to Gimbals to get the skates. Like, well, we don't have them here at Macy's, but you can go to Gimbals. And the salesman was like, oh my God, you're going to get fired for this. And Mr. Macy's like, now I want every department. If we don't have a product, they should recommend where to send them to. And that, how that up sales. Like that approach. Like it shouldn't be, we should use these tools because we're obligated to versus let's find the right tool for the right job, no matter what it is.
The world is changing fast. AI is it's not a buzzword, it's reality. But how important with the way things are changing that you keep a culture of innovation within, because there will be changes that take place and disruption can hurt culture in some cases. So how do you balance the change that is coming and to make sure you stay on track culturally?
I think the speed at which things are happening now is unprecedented. And this is someone who's been in this space for 30 plus years. I think the idea that innovation, if I miss a day or two of newsletters that I collect and read, and there's a collection that I've gotten to a point where these are like the 5 newsletters I read every day. If I don't read, let's say I don't go through my emails this week, I only go through important stuff because I'm here and I'm busy. On Thursday, I'll go in and delete those because they're useless to me now. It's been 3 days. The world's changed. I pick out an article and I read an article and it's from anywhere before 2023. I won't read it. Why? That's a different world. Like that's how fast things are happening. That's how relevant you need to be. So if I was running a company, I'd have one person responsible for just literally keeping track of everything that's going on in AI, everything that's going on in informatics and robotics as it pertains to the industry I'm in. Like that would be that would be a full-time job and provide summaries and analysis every day, or feed it into an AI engine and have that do that, right? If you don't want to hire a cousin or your nephew to do that, you can feed that. But I'd have that prompt every day because things are happening so fast.
Part of culture is who comes into your organization. And you mentioned when you were at Google, you were part of the interview team. You did over 1,000 interviews. How do you strategically find somebody who's right for your culture? Because people can also be a culture disruptor, so you want to make sure you get the right people.
Sure, and I think that matters. And I think what we found, Laszlo Bock, who was head of HR at Google while I was there, and ended up being a friend of mine. I still talk to him. What he did strategically. We ended up, I think it was during my time there, in the 15 years I was there, we were either the number one place to work or in the top 3 all 15 years I was there. And that's a hard achievement to get. And how you got there is by hiring the right people, but more importantly, never resting on that, going in and checking. So for example, here's an example. We used to, when I was interviewing at Google, we would ask the ridiculous questions, the hard questions. So one of the interview questions I got is, how many streetlights are there in the United States of America?
How many streetlights are there in the United States of America?
Yeah, that was an interview question I got.
Really?
Yeah. How many golf balls can you fit in an airplane? That was another question I got, right? These were logic-based questions.
Are these the ones where you could tell if I was smart or not?
Well, this is what we thought. This is my point, right? So these are the type, we had these kinds of like logical questions asked. There used to be like tests of these things out there. Like these are like logic-based questions.
Did you see deer in the headlights like all the time?
So no, I'm saying those are the questions I got asked.
Okay.
When I went through the interview process.
Were you a deer in the headlights going?
No, there's no right answer to it. It's
Okay.
the process of thinking, right?
Okay.
And so what Laszlo did is him and his HR team would review that, and then they realized that those were not the right questions that got you to cognitive ability, right? So we changed the questions. Another thing that we used to do is we used to look at transcripts. We used to hire at Google, you couldn't get in unless you had like a 4.0 transcript, college transcript, right? Laszlo, again, his HR team looked at that and was able to see that there was no correlation between test score, between grades that the person got and their work performance. Right. And so we got rid of that. So that's what I mean by this idea of culture of innovation is that we changed the questions. We stopped asking for grades. We stopped that. Then eventually we stopped asking for degrees. Like the head of system admin in Mountain View had a high school degree. He didn't even have a college degree. When before you couldn't even interview unless you had a college degree. And then what do you see? And years later, companies started doing that where they weren't requiring college degrees anymore. And states stopped asking for college degrees. And so culture of innovation goes in and asks questions like why? Like asking like curiosity is a big element of a culture of innovation. It's always constantly asking why? To the point where you're a pain in the ass when you're asking all the time. Why do we do it this way? Why do we have a key on the paper towels in the bathroom? Right? Like, have you ever thought of that question? Most people, but in my head works that way all the time. Right? It's like it's annoying to most people. So this idea that you're constantly asking why we do things a certain way, why don't we improve things? I think it's a natural state to be in for me. And so when I'm hiring people, I want people to be in that state as well. So the interview process matters. And so what came out of that were the 4 elements that we interviewed for, and we would ask very specific questions. So the question of how many traffic lights in the United States turned into, I'll give you an example. It's probably a public question now, but it was something like, your friend is opening up a bakery in San Francisco and wants your help to figure out where to open it up and what she should sell and what she should sell it for. What do you tell her?
I would say you got to do a lot of research and data. I mean that's you. If you don't research it from car count to count and actually and what to serve, right?
Well, I would then if we were interviewing for a job, I'd ask like, what would you research? Where would you go? I would ask you follow-up questions. And what I'm getting at is what I want to know is how do you think? What do you think? Where do you stop? And you'd be surprised at how, like, I would ask a question, someone, I would just Google it. I'm like, all right, have a nice day. So it's getting that interview process to a place that, and the reason I say I don't even know if they do it that way anymore, because if the culture is true, then they're constantly innovating and they're not asking the same questions. They're always changing and always getting better and always looking back at things, going through exit interviews, looking at somebody who was at Google for 5 years and when they leave, why did they leave? What was their experience like? What was their performance like? That's the discipline that goes into it. You
brought up yin and yang a lot, and I'm going to go back to Google. I'm sure there was a lot of companies out there, both tech and normal, said, we want a culture like Google. But the yang was they didn't do the research to find out, because they saw the free food, they saw the pool tables and said, well, that's the culture. If you're going to do that, you better do the research to actually know what that culture was, right? Yeah.
Well, also, I mean, this is not rocket science for me. I think this applies to everything. It's if someone said to you, look, by this summer, I want to be, 6'1", 185. I want 12% body fat and a 6-pack. Okay. What do you have to do to get that? you got to put the work in, right? It's not going to show up, right?
I'll never be 6'1". That's not going to happen anymore.
You're not going to, my point is that you're not going to get, you have to go do the work.
Yeah.
You have to do the work to get there. And I think we all have blind spots for this. We all have this space. Like one of the things since leaving Google, I had some personal things happen in my life after leaving Google that got me to this place where I needed to find some mental relief. And so I've always tried to meditate, and I couldn't find a good solution for me. But then I eventually found transcendental meditation. So I meditate twice a day. And the calmness that is in my life, just on a consistent basis, like I don't get angry, I don't get upset, I'm just in a constant, and I'm always thinking, and there's just this flow that I have to me, and it comes from meditation. And when someone comes to me with their problems and they want advice, and I'm talking about just personal problems, the first question I ask is, do you meditate? And they say no. I'm like, okay, well, I can't help you until you do that. And why? And what I've discovered through science, this is not the chakra world. This isn't hokey pokey stuff. This is real science. Go to the scientists, Sam Harris, like all of them meditate, by the way. The Sam Harrises of the world, all the hardcore scientists do this. Why? So I say to them, do you exercise? Do you work out? How do you keep your body in shape? Oh, I go to the gym 4 times a week for an hour. Okay. How do you exercise your mind? Right? And so that's what meditation is. So meditation is working out. It's a workout for your mind. And so even me, living in an innovative world, innovative culture, didn't even see that blind spot in my world that I discovered after I left Google. And it's been had a tremendous impact on, probably why the long hair still here, but has a tremendous impact on me in my life and how I do things. So, but again, twice a day, 22 minutes, every day, it's discipline. You're not going to just, what most people do is like, oh, I tried to meditate. I did it on Tuesday for like 10 minutes and nothing happened. That's like literally saying I went to the gym and I worked out yesterday and look at me. I don't have a 6-pack, right? And so it's culture of discipline. What I've learned is a culture of innovation. Innovation at all is discipline, period.
So if somebody comes to you and say, or I'm going to ask you to give free advice. Mm-hmm. Somebody says, what's the one thing we can do to improve our culture today? What would you say?
Well, there was a 2-part thing. Number one is, what is that you want it to look like? Because again, if you said, there's a different strategy if you said, I'm bringing it back to what people can relate to, right? Which is, everybody wants to be fitter. Everyone wants to, be in better shape. Everyone wants to live, right? Nobody wants to be on medications and dialysis and all these things. So if you said, I want to be fit, the question is like, how fit? Do you want to be 12% body fat fit, or do you want to be like not die of a heart attack fit? Those are 2 different strategies. And then once you determine what kind of culture you want to be in, then the next question is, now we need to do an analysis to find a gap between an honest analysis of where you are to where you want to be and what that gap is. And then all the work goes into closing that gap.
Do you think a lot of companies start out with good cultures, but then they grow so fast and they don't adapt that culture? Have you seen that a lot?
I think that happens, and I think there's the question I've been struggling with, and it's a Google question, it could be an Amazon question, it could be any of the big companies, is how long can you sustain an innovative culture for before you move to a more traditional culture? And what I mean by that is, because Google at the time, when I joined, there was probably like 4,000 people working there. And it was easier to move things around. It was, we would open up an office. So the way we would open up a new office, let's say we were opening up an office in Singapore, or even in Omaha, Nebraska, let's say we open up an office here. We would bring Googlers from other offices, specifically Mountain View, to come do a temporary assignment there, to work and live there for a year or 2 years or 3 years to establish that culture. But if you're opening up 100 offices, if you're going from 4,000 employees to, I don't even know how many people work at Google, 100,000 people there now.
Wow.
It's harder to so it's more, the question I'm asking myself, instead of trying to maintain right? That type of culture, like what does it turn into? What is the sustainable culture that it turns into? Because I think there is a correlation between size and culture. I think it's easier if you have 10 people to have a culture than it is to have 100,000 people and have the same culture. I don't know. And again, this is where the research needs to go into is I don't know if you can have the same type of culture. Can you have innovation qualities inside of a big company? I think you can. But I also think that the idea that the expectations that 100,000 person Google is going to be the same as 100 person Google is unrealistic.
You should get on the speaking circuit. That'd be a good career choice.
I'm back. I'm not doing it as much as I used to try. I was telling the Uber driver today, I used to travel 200 to 300,000 miles a year.
Wow.
Yeah. And this is part of the look, I discovered who I am in the last 5 years. But so I don't do that as much. I don't travel as much anymore. So I get to be selective in what I do. But there, even that was a cultural thing for me. Like I remember when American Airlines took away my executive platinum. Like it took years for them.
Was it like?
I at the time said I would rather them take away my American citizenship than my executive platinum status. And it took a while to go from like always getting I was always in first class or upgraded to first class, right? Or number one on the list to be upgraded to like looking on the list and being like 34th on the list. That was a cultural shock for me. Or like sitting in a like regular, I didn't like a regular seat.
Coach?
So yeah, it was like people like, I'd say, oh, I have to go to Australia. Like, oh my God, how do you do that? I went to Australia. It was horrible. I'm like, what are you talking about? It's awesome. I love trying. I went to Australia for a 4-hour meeting and then flew back. Why? Again, culture. I didn't realize that there's a difference between sitting in business class in a lay down bed in your own little cubicle, right? Where you can like sleep soundly for 8 hours and wake up, have a nice meal, watch TV and do some work. Versus sitting in row 39F, right, in the middle seat. Those are two different worlds, right?
And you lived the good life because you walked on the plane and took a left. I walked on the plane and take a right.
I went to Italy a couple of months ago. And
where'd you go? I'm going in December. It'd be my 16th or 17th time.
It was one of those weird. So I travel so much that I haven't traveled more than 2 or 3 flights a year in 5 years, and I still had 250,000 miles sitting in my account. And I would hand them out. I was telling my Uber driver, like, she was talking about her vacation and how they're going to Vegas. And the reason I brought up travel with her is because I travel so much that vacation for me was not going anywhere. Like just being home was vacation for me. And so I would give out to my kids, like when my daughter graduated from college, I gave her like 200, 300,000 miles. That was her graduation pay. Like go anywhere you want in the world. Right? Like I said, just go travel the world for a year. And so I gave her that. It was one of those weird experiences where I woke up on a Saturday and American Airlines was having some crazy point sale where if you flew to Naples, you could do it for 2 people for round trip for 40,000 miles, which was unheard of. So we literally just booked a trip to go to Naples. Wasn't even a place, but we used that as a starting point. And it was awesome. They have the best pizza in the world.
Naples is good.
And then we went from Naples to Rome to...
Did you go to Florence?
No, we didn't go that far. Down to
the Amalfi Coast, or Sorrento and the Amalfi Coast.
Yeah, all that. We did all that. Did a week there, and it was great. So it was great. But the point is that I sat in like a regular seat. It was weird to sit in a regular seat for that long. I don't know how people do that.
So who would have thought the Pillars of Progress podcast would turn into a travel podcast as well?
I have lots of travel tips.
Jaime, thanks for doing this. We appreciate it. Hope you're having a good time in Omaha.
We always am. Always am.
And thank you for watching and listening to the Pillars of Progress podcast.